and marathon drawer Don Clements, and to have him hopefully share a little bit about what came out of that work, which is a figurative body of work that Marc refers to as ceramic drawings. Since Marc's last visit to BSC, he's been busy and working quite a bit outside of his home studio, and he's done residencies at the International Fine Art Colony of Ceramics in Uzice, Serbia, if I pronounced that right. We were joking about that, as well as the Shanghai Institute for Visual Arts in China. And he just drove on Sunday from Montana, where he was at the Archie Gray Foundation for 2.5 months, and he drove all the way here. So it's a real pleasure to have him join us so quickly. And the residency circuit's not over. This spring and summer, he's going back to Shanghai at the Institute of Visual Arts, as well as he'll visit the Yingyi Art Museum in Taiwan and spend time in residence at the Shengyu Art Center in Shengyu, China. A little bit about Marc, for those who may not know. He got his MFA from UNC Chapel Hill and his BA from the College of William and Mary in Williamsburg, Virginia. He's a professor at the State University of New York at Potsdam and has also taught at Princeton University and Parsons School of Design. His 2015 exhibitions include the Uzice Municipal Art Museum, the Shanghai Institute of Visual Arts, Marianne Heller Gallery in Heidelberg, Germany, as well as the Oldenburg State Museum of Art and Culture in Oldenburg, Germany, and Bates College Museum in Lewiston, Maine. This summer he'll have another show at Marianne Heller Gallery in Germany, and Marc's works, his ceramic sculptures, can also be found in the collections of the Metropolitan Museum, the Brooklyn Museum, the Museum of Arts and Design, Bemis Center, the Everson Museum in Syracuse, the Mint Museum in Charlotte, and MFA Boston, as well as the Renwick Gallery at the Smithsonian, as well as numerous international collections. So everyone, it's a real pleasure to have Marc back with us. Please welcome him to BSC.
Thank you all so much for coming out tonight to listen to me. And if you have any questions along the way, I love questions because it lets me know that you're actually not asleep. Also, I'm going to try and stay within my time limits because I think that's important. But before I start, I want to talk a little bit about some people who we can be very thankful for. I'd like to talk about the founders and give credit to them. Fred Osborne, John Gregg, Louise von Weisse, and that's how you say it in Germany. I don't know how you say it in here. And also, you know, the original director was George Perlman, and our current director is Gary Clark. And Kathy Black and Tara Thacker are the program directors. I don't know if they're here. I don't think they are, but I'd like to clap for them. And I want to talk about, you know, think about it. They created this out of nothing, and what a magical thing that is for all of us to enjoy. And I don't know, to me that just seems the highest thing one could do, especially in our culture where there's just so little support for the arts. And think of whenever I go into corporate America or military America, and I just see these settings that are oozing with wasted money, just tons of it. And I think, wow, just a few little scraps could create magic in these places. And but you know, it takes people like those people I just mentioned to do it, and so we thank them. The other thing I want to say is that all of us, if we continue what we are doing, if we invest the 10,000 hours that we need in order to become interesting in whatever we choose to do, we will succeed, all of us. And with that success will come tangible and material stuff, including money. And I want you to think about that someday, many years from now, you'll have an opportunity to give back to this place. Maybe you know somebody who has a foundation who could set up a scholarship for future students. Maybe you yourself can. Think about it. It's you know, it's like having another child, to create something lasting in perpetuity, in addition to your art. So I just want you to think about helping to make the future better. All of us are beneficiaries of past people's generosity. I am, you are. We're benefiting. Let's also give back when we can. Not now, when we can. Anyway, this is very important to me, and this is one thing that I love about our country. You don't see this kind of generosity, this private generosity that you see in this country. It's a really beautiful thing. Europeans are always sort of perplexed by it because the government is supposed to do it. Well, here ours doesn't, so we've got to. Okay, so I've spent quite a bit of time, but I thought it's very important. Okay, so now let's see if I can see. Okay, so I'm going to start off with just some recent work, and some of these don't have scale. This is about 18 inches tall. This one is as tall as a person, and you can see the detail shot on the right. I don't know if you can see a female figure there. I also want to thank our honored guest, Galen Cheney, for joining us. I'm doing it in the dark because I knew it would be worse if I did it while it was bright.
No one knows who I am anyways.
Well, she's a fabulous artist. She makes non-objective paintings. Oh, we have a double here. But she has an exhibit. What is the gallery?
River Arts Gallery, Morrisville. So if anyone's headed
River
to
Arts.
Morrisville, we'll give you directions.
Well, and I'm going there. So anyway, we went to high school together, so it's a real honor and pleasure to have her here. Okay, continuing. This is quite a large, heavy piece too. That's probably about life size right there. These are all very recent pieces. This is also quite large. I think it's about that size. And these are just sort of what I've been working on before I did this whole stint of residencies that Tara was telling you about. This one was exciting. I've been playing with lusters, and this is an oil spot glaze with lusters. This is about 18 inches in diameter. And this is very recent. These ovals are a newer thing for me. And here's an earlier one where I don't think the shape is as good, but front and back. And this was actually the last piece. Well, not the last piece, but the piece I made here the last time I was here. I made this little piece in the studio, and I only glazed and fired it last fall. And sometimes there's a real lag. A little bit of personal background here. My parents, they came to America in the early 50s. Europe was kind of bad. You couldn't do much there. Was sort of devastated. And here, everything was so booming and open and exciting. This was their first house. They didn't own it. It didn't have central heat. But my father, he was a weaver, and he became tremendously successful, and he collected art. And this is one of the pieces that he collected that's now in the Getty Museum. This is a breathtakingly beautiful piece that's about 5,000 years old. I grew up with art. I was very lucky. Art was in the house. This too is his. This is not something I actually have. My father gave it to me. I didn't know it was by the master, Clement Masquier. And a friend of mine, Tom Pichet, who's a curator, he identified it for me. I'd always loved it. And that influenced my interest in exploring lusters. I actually went to Australia and worked with Greg Daly, who's probably the most important living master with luster glazes now. So that was an interesting thing. This is the only complete dinner service that I ever made. But there were over 100 pieces. That's just a few of them. These are some of my heroes. I've noticed that a lot of my heroes happen to be female artists, and I know I'm about to offend some people, so beware. But I just hate it when people feel that they can only be most inspired by artists who have the same gender or race as, I'm hoping so much before the day I die that we can be inspired by whoever based on the work. But I've noticed that a lot of the artists I love are female. And this is more of my tableware, very thin. Oops. This is one of my heroes. This is actually one of the few male ones, Hans Koper. I love how we use the potter's wheel as a tool for making sculpture, basically. These are some of my pieces now. This is really early, and I threw a couple of these in just to show you where the origins of this carving really began. This is a lid for a thrown canister, but a couple of decades later it can become a sculpture. These are another form that I've enjoyed making, these pagoda forms, which you'll see more of. This is a man who gave me some sort of sense that I wasn't wasting my time. Most of us, when we make art, we're told, oh, why are you doing that? That's stupid. You'll never survive. You'll never make money. You'll never blah, blah, blah. All that negative shit. And that's why it's so great to be with you. Like, this is why I love these places and why I love Mr. Greg and Louise and these people, because they created this place where we can all be together and tell each other we're not crazy, we're on to something, we're doing something important and valuable, and we're not killing people in Iraq. Sorry, that came out. But this man, Jack Leonard Larson, he's a famous weaver, and sometimes he's like the dean of the studio weaving movement post-World War II. And he has always encouraged me. I mean, I hear from him very, very often. Jack Leonard Larson, just a brilliant man. He's very pompous and difficult and impossible, but I don't care. He has the goods. He can back it up. So what? He's done something. There's his textiles on the left. They're very sculptural, just gorgeous. And that's a piece of mine on the right. And maybe that's why he responded to my work. Here's another one of those pagodas. This one I actually mixed different porcelains together, and one of them was not a porcelain, it was a glaze. And so that's why the piece is sort of warped and melted. And I enjoyed turning glaze into clay and making things melt in the kiln, because then I don't know exactly what's going to happen. It can be more interesting that way. Translucent porcelain. This is one of my heroes, Adelaide Robineau. It took her 2 years to carve this vase. There's a wonderful story behind it, but I want to kind of plow ahead to stay within my time limits. But it's dry carved, and it was, there's so many stories with that vase. It's in the Everson Museum. This is a piece I made that's also dry carved. Dry carving is great, because you never have to worry about the clay drying out. It's already dried. So, when you're working and someone interrupts you, sometimes I'm like, no, I can't go to the bar. I can't go do this or that because my clay's drying and I got to work with it. But with dry clay, you can stop anytime. It's perfect for teacher. These are all dry carvings. A little bit of sort of lifestyle magazine stuff. I live upstate. Tara and I were joking about her. She's a magazine junkie also. Anyway, I live upstate. I bought a building that reminds me of this one. Do you see that light orange building there? That's mine. And nobody wanted it. It was on the market for a couple of years. I made a lowball offer, about 50% of the asking price, and they accepted it. Oh my God, I wish so much they hadn't. It's been such a nightmare to fix up. I can only imagine what poor Mr. Perlman had to deal with when he was the first director here. But anyway, it's on the river, just like this one is, and it's nice to pretend it was easy. This is my living room. And there, my beautiful view of the river. Do you see the connection? And this is my kitchen and the beautiful sunsets. And, never mind the fact that in November and December, we can have 60 days without a single sunny day. Thank God for vitamin D. This is my garden. I have a little cabin in the woods somewhere else, and this is my little chaise longue in the garden. Those are weeds. I planted every little thing there. And I have to give credit to everything to what made everything possible. My students. I teach. When I wanted to go to grad school, my professor asked me, "Well, why do you want to go to grad school?" And I said, "Well, I want to become a ceramics professor." And she said, "You'll never get a job." Isn't it great to have people like that in your life? My father said when I told him my plan that I was ruining my life. But it's good. We go to artist colonies and be around people who understand and who support. But my students and my university, even though the university is incredibly dysfunctional, students are fabulous, and it's incredibly underfunded because the state legislature has forgotten that education is a public good. It is not a private luxury, and it's good for the tax base too. But these, my job and my students have, they were a very important part of my life. So I have a few pictures of them with their work. They're so fabulous. This is her family came for her opening. I just got an email, a Facebook thingy from her. I couldn't believe it. So I wrote her back, "You're in my lecture tonight, Julian Schnibbe." Isn't that great? I mean, a chia pet with plant. I mean, that's so great. Oh, she got such a hassle from people, and she was like, "Is it too, whatever?" And I said, "No, go for it. It's not enough. Be crazy." I mean, Duchamp was crazy when he said this urinal is art. This was a student in Beijing. I taught also at Tsinghua University. That's China's Harvard. And this girl, her nickname was Little Tiger. And look at her face. She was so strong, tiny. And she made one of the things I taught them to do is to carve these rings. And this is in Australia with a whole group of students who carved rings. They carved other things too. But this is a student of mine who's now in Boston. That she made a ceramic seat, which was designed to be a player for her iPhone, and that was amazing. She's a genius. Sarah Banker, look at her ceramic seat. I told them that you have to be able to. It has to support your weight. So anyway, okay, back to my work. So Warren Martin. This is another one of my heroes, Jay DeFeo. Again, a woman. You can't really tell from the name. A lot of times in this period, women would sort of have these ambiguous names because of the discrimination back then. That painting on the right, look at it, it's 2,000 pounds and it took her 8 years to make. That's the kind of stuff that inspires me. That determination. A lot of my work is broken, sometimes on purpose, sometimes not on purpose. If I can get it to work and I like it, then it's mine. I like it. Then I accept it. Half of this was wood-fired, half of this was fired in an electric kiln. China is also a big influence. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the jades from ancient China. They were buried with the dead. You can still buy them in the flea markets. A lot of them are fakes now. You can still buy real ones, but it's hard.
Can you show that image that you just showed before this?
This
I
one?
just need a moment for that.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to stay within my
Flying through
time.
your own stuff. You need it.
Well, that's not as interesting.
Well, I don't know. It's interesting.
Well, thank you. So I made some pieces in response. It was believed that the universe was a circle, and look, I'm leaving it on mine, and the hole in the center would allow the spirit to pass through to the universe. I just don't know. I think that's a very powerful image. This is Chinese jade. I go nuts over these jades. I bought some. That's another story where I bumped into a friend of mine who I needed to help me buy my first one, and I bumped into him in Beijing. I wish Spencer were here. Marc, what are you doing here? It was the craziest, most unbelievable thing. This is translucent porcelain. I love Bridget Riley, op artist. This was something that was really great. Oh God, before that I was, nobody was paying attention to my work or interested in it or everything. It was so depressing. You know, in ceramics you have to make the vessel or you have to make the figure. You know, there are these, or you have to go to these certain schools that have this mafia. You know, and I guess like here Yale would be the mafia school, but you know, and I didn't have any of that, this is another story about how I was in the show, then I was out of the show, then I was in the show. I didn't know what to think. I didn't believe it till I actually saw it, and there it was, and it was with all my heroes. I mean, to the right of it is a Hans Koper. Further to the right are two Lucy Rees. So there, you know, that was an exciting moment. That was in 1999. I like grouping works. I think they have a dialogue. I think your eye bounces back and forth. I think it's you know, I've done that a number of times. The piece on the left was dry carved, and I carved that piece on and off for a couple of years. Not every day, but you know, they could sit around for a long time. This was another big opportunity, the show at PS1 in Queens, and I have Dawn Clements and Fong Bui to thank for this. Dawn Clements, Fong Bui was visiting Dawn in her studio, and my work was sitting on her work table and she was drawing it, and they got to talking about it, and he curated a show this show at PS1, and wow, what a thrill that was to show there. That was incredible. And these were, if you want to know what's going on with current art, Google the Brooklyn Rail. It's free. It's an art newspaper, the Brooklyn Rail, like railroad. And Fong Bui is the founder, and he's a socialist or a communist or whatever. What that really means is that you don't have to pay, and you don't have a limit of 10 articles a month like the New York fucking Times. You can look at it all. And I wanted him to look through everything and curate the show. And this is the collection of pieces that he curated into this show. Oh, there's some funny stories. And there was a piece that some people broke so many times that the staff there had to actually fabricate it out of some sort of plastic clay because people had to touch it. It was so weird. I ended up turning those 10 pieces into one piece called Fong's Table in homage to Fong. If you ever have a chance, he's just fantastic. You all should invite him here. He would be great. He's an artist. He's a painter also. He's many things. I'm interested in all media. Ceramics in the art world is not really fully accepted, and I don't really understand that. Like, why does art need to be made out of one medium and not another? I mean, it seems to me it should be able to make it out of anything. But, you know, whatever. A lot of prejudice in this country in many ways. So I've worked in other media. This is lead, crystal, pâte de verre. And bronze. I was talking with Harlan about bronze and encouraging him to. I think you would just love it. I carved a clay prototype, and I chopped out a lot of these process shots. This was done at Talix, and it was a commission, so I didn't have to worry about paying. The commissioner, the people who commissioned this were extremely patient and wonderful. When I was done 2 years later, they said, are you finally ready to let go of it? And I said, yes. They wanted to put it on a cement slab, and I was like, no, has to be on a stone slab. And of course, that set them back another $6,000. But they never. There was never any, nasty stuff about that. Here are some detail shots of the piece.
That's of the bronze piece?
Yeah, of the bronze. Wait, let me. Yeah. They're patinas. I was very involved with the patina process, and on the edge is actually gold. Real gold. Gold was cheap then. I have no idea. I mean, basically, I had carte blanche to do this thing. It was really wonderful. Anyway, I've also worked in factory settings. There are a lot of different ways an artist can make work. That's what I'm trying to give you a sense of. That it's not necessarily a solitary practice in your own studio. This arts industry program is famous in Wisconsin. Ruth Kohler, the granddaughter or great-granddaughter, I forget, of the founder, started this program. Her brother, who was like the CEO of the thing, was very negative about it. Like, why are we doing this? This is a waste. The artists are stupid and blah, blah, blah. And then he changed his tune when there was a front page article in the Wall Street Journal about this program, this innovative program. So after that, she didn't have to deal with his crap anymore. This was a piece that I made after 3 months of working there. Oh man, it was a lot of work. It's held together by gravity. It's not touching those posts. I worked for 3 months, and then they helped me get these blocks in this room at 10 o'clock at night. At 8 o'clock in the morning, I had an appointment with Ruth Kohler. So I spent the whole night building this thing. So that was interesting. Of course, I had to do a throne and tiles. This I applied for a subway. I wanted a subway stop in Manhattan. I didn't get it. I never get grants. I just got my latest rejection today for something I really, 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 really wanted. That would have been transformational. But welcome to the club. Rejection is part of the deal. But you know what? We all are here, and we were accepted, and so we love this place. So I should be in the PR department, right?
Yeah.
So here's another factory, very different from the Kohler company. Look at that. It's not a cloudy day. That's pollution. I was there for a month, and I remember thinking, oh my God, I've never had this feeling before of claustrophobia in open air. But I got that feeling when I was breathing this air that I knew was poisonous. And my heart started pounding. It really had an effect on me, and I had to do biofeedback. Is that the right term? Where you calm yourself down, and I'm like, okay, for a month you have to deal with this, And so I did. And this is the factory. And this is amazing. That guy the guy in the khaki pants and the red shirt that's tucked in, he was the CEO of this company, and he was helping us load these artworks into the factory kiln. And that was a real wake-up. His name is Chairman Shu. This is a family factory. There was Chairman Shu, Brother Shu, Sister Shu, Deluxe Shu, and then and then there were the children Shu. And they all were connected to this in one way or another. But he was working, and I was like, wow, when you see these American CEOs who don't have a single callus on their fingers, excuse me, I'm just dripping with contempt for American capitalism at this point. I've never gotten a corporate commission or in a collection. I mean, that bronze, hello? I mean, I just don't get it. I walk around New York and I see stuff, I could be there. It's good enough. Anyway, so here I'm working in China. And this is what I made in a month. Well, sorta. In China, anything is possible in a month because there are 1 million people to help you. And you would not believe the help that I got. I used to have all sorts of pictures and I stripped them away to try to edit.
You can go back to those. They were so beautiful.
Oh, thank Oh, the guy who helped me, oh my gosh. Those are actually, I made like, I guess about 7 molds, and they were all similar, and
Are these about 3 feet in diameter?
they're about 2 feet in diameter, but they actually get smaller in the distance. Yeah, those are ceramic. And, but in the front they're not, that's rope. Rope is bubble wrap in China. I don't know if now it is, but it was then in 2007. Instead of bubble wrap, they used rope. So when you wanted to ship something, you would call Rope Man, and Rope Man would wrap everything up. And they were very negative about me leaving these pieces wrapped up, because they're like, if I had an exhibit here and I left my artwork in the bubble wrap, people would not be able to understand that. So, but they didn't understand that this was very beautiful for someone like me who has to deal with ugly things like bubble wrap. So collaborations. This has been a very exciting part of my practice, because making art it's kind of lonely, and it's nice to work with somebody and to get some feedback, even if you don't agree with it. No, that I don't like that. That's not the way that my thing is going to be. I mean, that's fine. So collaboration is exciting. I love it. The piece on the right is a collaboration that I did with Rand Esser, and his sister Carrie Esser. Oh, they're both great artists. And there's Jack Larson again with one of his magnificent textiles. Oh my gosh, I have so many stories about him. He's such a trip. This was actually a candelabra. So he has a candle in front of it there, and there it's without a candle. Oh, that's when it was owned by me. It was, pristine. This is more of the work that I made with Rand Esser. So he did the metal and I did the ceramic. This was one of my first residencies. Wow, my first gallery was the best gallery I ever worked with. The first and second residencies I ever had were, this one was in a castle in the south of France. Chateau de la Napoule, they still sometimes have residencies. Chateau de la Napoule, right there. Côte d'Azur, it's 5 kilometers from Cannes, it's really nice. I worked with Mario Coutayar, and we did a number of things, and I've chopped a lot of them out. But this was the centerpiece of our installation. We took this red fabric. Our installation was called Toward a Nouvel Ancien Régime. The Ancien Régime was the Bourbon monarchy. This was in response to, the American government had chopped the NEA to death. I mean, this was more when that was happening, and we were thinking wow, these kings were actually great patrons of the arts, so we want to revive the monarchy. This is before George W. Bush, or even anything like that. So it was very ironic now. But anyway, so we put our little thoughts on these little pieces of paper, like Hershey's Kisses or fortune telling, and those are real apples. So and then we also made our own work, and this was. So he's a brilliant artist. He would be great to bring here. And he's also a critic. His writing is so spot on. When I met him, he was making a green painting like that. He was in the gardens of the chateau painting this green abstraction. And he was in the garden to capture the right green. So it was just so magical to see him painting this abstraction in this beautiful garden. Like a landscape painter would be more literally painting a landscape. And this is one of the pieces that I made there. And then Dawn Clements, the catalog is here. And this is Dawn. And oh my gosh, she is amazing. And what we did is she it was very hard to start this, but she started it by making some drawings, and I made some ceramic pieces in response. And so you can see, the drawings and then my responses. And then some of the pieces, then she would respond to my response. And there were some where there were, I think 7 or 8, back and forths. And it was really interesting to work with.
Were her drawings like the film stills, or?
That's an ink drawing of hers, literally right there. And yeah, that one was based on last year in Marienbad from 1960.
She made you sort of watch the film
She did. She gave me a copy of the film, and I watched it like a year or two later. I was too busy. Yeah. Oh boy, you should have seen the daggers. Have you seen it? No. And there were lots of. It was not an easy thing. And when I was in Hungary for the first part of the collaboration, someone stole one of her drawings, and that was a really horrible thing to have to talk with her about. But anyway, this is a piece that she made. This is one of the easier to read ceramic drawings. I don't know if you can see, that's a necklace on the bottom half of hers on the left, and on that bottom disc of mine you can see the ceramic drawing of the necklace. And then on top you see the fruit and the measuring tape, and you can see the silhouette of those sort of embedded in the carvings of my disc. These are the ceramic drawings that Tara was referencing in the introduction. And then I also would create often a literal copy of her, of her work. So usually I do a ceramic drawing within the carved fluted matrix, and then a literal sculpture, copying her work. And then this was in her studio, her work table, and she created this drawing, this enormous 28-foot long drawing of my work and other stuff on that work table. And she wanted to, we were looking to have a show together, and so she's with Pierogi Gallery in Brooklyn, and so she approached Joe, and Joe was like, I don't want him in, ceramics. And so then Fong came and visited the studio, and he said, well, why don't you make the table part of the drawing? And so she did. So that way she got my work in. So we got to have our two-person drawing. Oh, that was funny. Oh my God! And it was really funny at the opening to see people didn't know how to look at sculpture. It was a little painful in a way, actually. And this was one of the last pieces I did with her, and you can see the silhouettes in the fluted matrix. She was often making pieces that were responding to Hollywood film stills. And then I started getting very playful and abstract in my sculptural renditions. I think I dumped that. Yeah, okay. I'm sorry. I dumped this collaboration with because I was trying to make it shorter. Mixed media installations, and this is one of my heroes, Lee Bonteque, again a woman. And there's actually those little circular planetoids within this piece are porcelain. And this was at MoMA Queens, which I don't know I think it's like a storage unit for MoMA now. They're so rich. This is Wolfgang Leib, a German artist, milkstone. It's a piece of marble that's carved in such a way that when you pour milk on it, the meniscus of the milk ends exactly where the marble edge is. So it's just brilliant. And of course, I guess you have to change the milk every day or else it starts to smell. This was in Japan, so I have no doubt that they change the milk at least once a day. They are this museum was so beautiful. It's actually the same designer as the Museum of Modern Art in New York, except it was good. MoMA's okay, but this place was glorious. The Museum of the City of Toyota. There's a Toyota City in Japan, and I guess we all know where the money came from. This was a mixed media installation that I did at Alfred University. This is sort of the mecca for ceramics, and I didn't go there. And one of you was talking about writing and making art at the same time. I don't write and make art at the same time, but I love exhibiting my art with writings. And in this case, I took a text, I borrowed and credited a text from Booker T. Washington's Up From Slavery that kind of called attention to the power of perseverance. That's why I respond to some of the artists that I've shown you, just because of that perseverance. And he cleaned a room 4 times in order to gain admission to the Hampton Institute. It's a very, you can read that book in a day, and it's just, oh my gosh, it's such a moving book. A lot of people have any of you read it, Up From Slavery? Nobody? It's so fun and easy, and it's brilliant. And you know, it's just a joy to read it. And it's about a man who grew up a slave and became a president and founder of a university. You know, I mean, just like these founders that I was telling you about. I mean, you know, these are people who created an institution, not just a work of art. And this institution, in Booker T. Washington's case, educated thousands of people who helped thousands more people. I mean, and he had 2 American presidents visit the campus. I mean, we haven't, at my little university in New York State, we haven't had any presidents there. Now, my alma mater, we've had many, but that's different. This is the text from if I read it to you, I'd start crying because it's so moving to me. I don't want to do that right now. The piece on the floor was influenced by Jorge Pardo's Dia Foundation floor. That's now gone. The Dia Foundation, of course, would never exhibit clay, but Jorge Pardo was commissioned to design the floor. So you know, the only way you could get clay into the Dia Foundation was to put it on the floor. So I made Jorge Pardo's other floor. This was a piece that I made in response to my disgust with the election of George. No, not the election. The selection of George Bush for both 2000 and 2004. I did the show is called Fault, and every piece in the show is broken, cracked, or whatever. And I don't know. That was a terrible moment in our history. Here was the exhibit. It actually was exhibited in Watertown, Connecticut, where Galen and I went to high school, and the floor is paper. Don Clements and I spent 3 days covering the floor with paper. We turned off the lights in the room, and I did the painting with my eyes shut. And then after the painting dried, I put the pedestals and all the art in it. You know, the text was from Lady Chatterley's Lover. That's another great book, also fun to read. This text is about the dehumanization of workers through the mechanization of the mining process, which I connected to these voting machines that they had by the Diebold Corporation that some people believe are rigged or were rigged, in particularly the red states. There's a lot of evidence that suggests that. And this is a totally fake picture that the photography teacher at that school made, because remember, I did it in the dark. These are some of the pieces. You know, they all have fault in them. And this one too. You know, that's 4 or 5 different pieces. And then there's an offering in 2010 at the Dom Museum. That's that catalog that Tara was referencing. This was commissioned by the museum, and this piece was in response to the election of Barack Obama. I mean, I was in tears. I couldn't believe when he got elected. I thought, well, surely they'll rig this election too. I mean, these elections are just fake now. But the margin of support that Barack Obama had in 2008 was so great that it wasn't riggable. It's only riggable when it's close, and not in New York State because we still have levers. We don't have electronic voting machines. But on the wall, I put a text from Coretta Scott King's autobiography, My Life with Martin Luther King Jr., and she's describing Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech. And again, if I read it to you, I'd start crying because it's such a moving passage. It's just gorgeous. And so I borrowed these words and had them surround my artwork. And I wrote the publisher many letters asking for permission, and I never heard. And so I just did it, and it was weird to write these corporations, that controlled this language and not get anything. Like in the 70s, when I was a kid, when you wrote corporations, you'd get letters back. Things have changed. So these are some detail shots. These pagodas are inspired by Empress Shotoku from the Nara period. It's like the 8th century in Japan. They were going through a horrible period of political upheaval, and she commissioned 1 million pagodas that were installed in 100,000 in each of 10 temples as sort of a prayer to the gods for better times. And so that was sort of, in 2008, this was sort of my prayer for better times. After the disastrous Bush presidency, what can you do? This cloud in the back of the installation was sort of my hope, that symbolized hope for me. These pagodas are in roughly a bowl shape. The silhouette is a bowl, and so that's why it was sort of my offering. They were like offering bowls. So there's a lot of layers to this piece. Not necessarily that people have to get them, but they're there. And then this was the most recent installation that I'd done, Torture, at the Sydney College of Art. Oh, this is such a beautiful place. It was just heavenly to be there. And in Australia, it's a right to have education, health benefits, housing. All of these things are a right that here the politicians, particularly right-wing ones, have told us are a privilege. It was a very different climate there. And, their system seems to work pretty well. And I never knew what to say when people would ask me, why don't Americans want universal health care? And I finally figured out the answer. I said, well, a lot of Americans aren't well educated. That was the only thing I could think of to say. This was the installation. There were these razor blades that were out, and inside this paper was the art, the installation. And on the top you see the installation at the beginning of the opening, and on the bottom you see the installation after the opening. And during the installation, that top picture is before the installation. But during the installation, viewers slashed the paper to see and find this stuff in here. Inside of here were portraits of characters from the convict period in Australia, and also I did portraits of Edward Snowden. This piece was sort of an homage to Edward Snowden, who had sort of revealed what our government was doing, in these situations. And, he's stuck in Moscow because he's not allowed to come back to the U.S. for exposing the U.S., for letting us know what our government was doing in our name. And there was also a reference to, what is her name? The girl in the Abu Ghraib scandal who was... What? Remember the girl who was taking Iraqi prisoners on a lit dog leash and taking pictures? I forget her name. But, so I was sort of referencing how in Australia torture became illegal, and in America it was still happening. There's a wonderful video, if you're curious about it, there's a wonderful video done by Doyle Dean. If you do Google Marc Leuthold torture, you can find it, and you'll understand it more. And also in the gallery was this sculpture that was referencing the natural beauty of Australia that had nothing to do with anything of the mankind. And it was influenced by these wind-sculpted rock formations by the sea in Sydney, which is a beautiful place. And that's it. But there's something very important that I need to say. Some of you may be signing up for me to visit you, to speak with you about your work. When I go there, I'm hoping so much that you'll have some questions for me. And not about my work, and one of the things I'm going to be asking you is, what do you want? How can we use this time? How will this time most benefit you? mean, I just came back from, I was just at the end of this residency for 2.5 months, and I was like frantically trying to finish everything. And at that moment, I needed nothing negative. You know, I needed nothing negative. I needed to see positive things because everything seemed negative. I'm my own worst critic. And, you know, and then there are other times where I really want, you know, I want some tough, you know. So I'm going to be basically asking you, what's going to help you? And the other thing is, you should feel free to be, you know, when I was so stupid. I made so many mistakes in my life. But, you know, when I was in that situation, I would be, just politely sort of waiting to see what the person would do with the time. I want to invite you to be the masters of that time because I'm here for you. I'm not here for me. I am here for you. And so, you know, if we're going in a direction that's not helpful to you, move it. If we're going in a direction that is, I'm going to probably ask you, how should we use this time? What can I do to help? And you know, we'll discuss, you know, the options. So again, so grateful to be here, and I'm looking so forward to getting to know some of you. I mean, you know, there's so many people. But I also want to thank you for taking time out of your precious studio time to come and listen to a crazy artist jabber. Thank you so much. And if people have questions, that's always fun, even if they're difficult. And if you're shy and want to ask me questions later, just buttonhole me when you see me around and say, I want to ask you about this. And I'll be flattered. It means you are awake. Yes?
Good question.
Yeah?
How do you find time to read as an artist?
Oh, how do I find time to read? Well, I'm trying to pace myself. If you look at my hands, I've got horrible calluses and stuff. And I'm trying not to work as much as I used to. And reading is a wonder. Reading is addictive. It's a drug. It's like an escape. I just love it. And how do I find time? In the morning, I love to read. And at night, you know, when I'm in bed, I like to read. I like to read to escape reality because it's not nice. Like, look, Bernie didn't make it. You know, I mean, I don't know how many of you are bummed out about that, but I'm just, ugh. Anyway, I mean, I've been getting his emails for years. I don't ever get done what I'm supposed to have done. Everything is always, I'm sort of resigned to not getting done what I want to get done and just doing the best I can and kind of going with the flow. And just like, okay, I've done enough and whatever, let the chips fall in. And I wanted to refine this lecture more, but I just stopped. And you saw it wasn't perfect. So yeah, reading is so great. Any other?
I do have one. Can't escape yet.
Oh, I don't want to escape. Okay. Wait, let me make that very clear. Can I steal your other chair here?
Yeah, go for it.
I am in no rush to escape. Yeah.
On most of your pieces, do you salt fire, gas fire, electric?
Good question. I like doing it all. When I was just in Montana, I electric fired some of my work, I gas fired some of it, and I wood fired some of it. I really wanted to do the wood firing because you get this, you know, lots of weird, crazy, unpredictable
You do it
effects.
in a pit in the ground?
No, this was in something called a train kiln. It was very interesting. It was this strange kiln that was kind of like a train, and you have the fire over here, and the flame comes here, and then it goes up a flue. And in a pit fire, it wouldn't get hot enough. This got over 2,300 degrees, so it gets as hot as a gas kiln.
What about raccoon?
I didn't do that, but I did that. There were actually a few raccoon. There was one oil raccoon piece in the lecture, and I should tell you what that is. This was in Hungary, and it's very bad for the planet, so I don't like to do it often. But they took oil from a train locomotive because it had a lot of metal filings in it, and they introduced that at the peak temperature of the firing, and so the oil just becomes, obliterated by the heat, and huge smoke and fumes. It's really terrible. I've done it twice in my life. But beautiful things, I tell my students, well, we all, even just by existing, we're ruining the planet. I mean, and at least if you do something beautiful, I don't know. I wouldn't want to do that all the time.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes.
One of the first slides you showed was a piece from your father's collection, and I was curious if you still collect, and if so, what role collecting has in your work.
Oh, interesting. I'm not a collector. My father is dead, and my stepmother probably has it. And they had their own family, and that's, the pieces that I have are pieces that he gave me when he was alive, and very little. Growing up with that art was very important for me, I think. I teach students, many of whom have grown up in houses where there was no art. And I don't know, to me that seems both unnecessary and sad because, anyone can have art in their house. I mean, all of us, anybody, even like if we pull someone out of the convenience store, they can make a work of art. Anyone. So it's not necessary to grow up without art. But to me, it seems sort of unnatural. Collecting, I have these pieces that, from most of the pieces that I have are pieces that were given to me, I'm not really wanting anymore because I'm sort of on the downside of my life now. And I'm wondering, wow, I'm a steward, and what am I going to do with these things? And, I don't have children, and I don't know, but I love having beautiful things in my life. Beauty is important. That's a very interesting question. In a way, it's nice to, when I was in Montana, I had no art, I had nothing, and so then I had to create. So I wondered whether living with art diminishes my output. I don't know. Did I answer your question?
Yeah.